Today we got to play Evacuation. Now, this is a game where, well, we destroyed a planet, and so we got to go to another planet to destroy it.
Yeah.
And we got to evacuate our population as well as our resource production over to the new planet so we can survive. Now, before we get into it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell because board games are amazing, and that's what we do here at Legends Never Nirvana. Randy, can you tell us a little bit more about Evacuation?
I can. This is a 2023 release. It has a Board Game Geek rating currently of 7.7 and a Board Game Geek rank of 1930. It's a 1 to 4 player game, 60 to 150 minutes. I think that's probably low depending on your player count and how fast they play. So 150 seems a little short for a 4-player game. Age 12 and up, I definitely think that this is not a simple game. It's once you get the hang of it, it's probably a medium level game.
Well, and it depends on which side you're playing as well. So
yeah, there's two types,
modes.
two modes of the game that are really totally different in play style. But if you play the race version of the game, then you can learn the other version pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Designed by Vladimir Sushi, who's one of our favorite designers. Art by Mikhail Pikel, I'm going to go with. Published by Rio Grande Games. It's an industry manufacturing game, it says.
This says Delicious Games.
Well, Delicious Games also did it. Rio Grande is the U.S. publisher.
Got it.
So, industry manufacturing, racing is one style of the game. Territory building, hand management would be the other style of the game. And then area control. Currently, it's out in a lot of different places, but it's out of stock or pre-ordered in several of them. The two cheapest where it's in stock is Card House for $48.95 and Game Nerds for $48.97. So if you're going to try to pick it up right now, those would be the two. The only other one that was cheaper than those anyway was Tabletop Merchant, but it was $46.97, I think, and it's out of stock.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to the quality of components. So there are a lot of wooden bits. You do get the plastic player markers for your population and some other...
Not the cube ones. Those we had to add because they don't give you enough of the little markers.
They don't. But they're these. They're the circular pastel-y colors. But other than that, it's wood bits. The card quality, there's no linen finish. You don't really use them a lot per se.
Well,
they're kind of thin.
I think you use the cards a lot in this game. It's central to the game.
Well, but they're not constantly shuffling except for this deck.
Yeah.
But I would sleeve these. These are kind of...
I'm definitely going to have to find some sleeves for these cards.
Yeah, I think sleeves are going to be a must.
And these are smaller sized cards. These are not your standard. I think these are the miniature Euros. So I need to find some miniature Euro sleeves.
Yeah, so he's going to be on the hunt. Yeah, so that being said, I don't think there's anything fantastic. You do get a lot of bits, I guess.
Rio Grande's not known for doing fantastic quality components.
Yeah, I'm kind of 5. Like, this is okay.
I think it's a little better than a 5. It does have an oversized board, and it's got a linen finish on it. And, the sheer volume of them. I'm going to give it...
The card quality is...
The card quality is not great, but it's not horrible. I'll give it a 5.5. I mean, it's not much more.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a little better than Catan.
Yeah, maybe. All right, so let's move on to the theme. So the theme is you've got to evacuate your planet, and you're going to try to get, your country out of there as quick as possible. I kind of saw these as 4 countries. We were kind of 4 different quadrants.
Yeah, I mean 4 continents maybe. I don't know. But basically each player has its own area. It's the same area geographically. It's just represented differently on the board. So you could differentiate where to place your tokens.
Yeah. So for me, I don't know. It felt like I was my own country, continent, or whatever, and I was in charge of evacuation in my area. I actually got all my people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I left a couple behind to watch. They had to...
as they died.
Somebody had to supervise as everybody else got off,
as they died. Okay? Yeah. They died.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, and then you're moving to another planet, and you're trying to settle there. Obviously, you're trying to get the best locations for that. Overall, the theme, I mean, it does feel like you're evacuating.
Yeah, it's definitely incorporated into the gameplay.
Absolutely. You're taking stuff, you got to move it. You do have 2 different resource pools and trying to manage those hands. Artwork, not that impressed.
No, it's mostly iconography. I mean, the art on the cards, like the ships and the stadiums, is pretty cool.
Well, then some of the ships are pretty nifty. I mean, there's a little bit of cool art maybe, but like the board's kind of, I don't know. It's all right. It's all right. I'm probably for theme because of the integration with the gameplay, and it really does feel like you're evacuating. I'm probably going to give it a 7.
Yeah, that's probably where I am at. It's I think it's the art is fine. It's just not represented much in the game, and it's mostly iconography and text.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to the actual rule book.
So the rule book is where things kind of suffer a bit. There's a lot to this game, first of all, and it's broken into different modes of play. So as we mentioned earlier, and it teaches you most of the rules based upon the racing version of the game. That's basically the standard mode if you're learning the game. And
which I do agree that's the way you should learn the game.
I do too. The problem is a lot of the iconography is lacking, and they assume you know several things, because some of the cards, they got a list of different cards, like the bonus cards, but it's not a complete comprehensive list. It doesn't show all of the bonus cards. So it's in other ways cases where you've got to guess if they don't have yours represented, that they assume you know what that means, but it's not always clear. And the icons can cause confusion, but most of the icons are represented on the back of the book, but there's only one copy of it. So we actually made photocopies for every player.
We did, and we're going to keep those in the thing. That way, when we need to pass them out, we can pass them out.
Because this is handy. It has a rules reminder. It has a cheat card. The cheat card is very basic. It just tells you the phases of the game, basically, which is handy as a reference, because there's you making sure you get the order right is important. And then it's got scoring on the back, which is for the other version of the game. That is actually handy to tell you how many points, what you get for the different conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the complete scoring. It's got, it does have the complete scoring for most, if you're playing the standard advanced game, but there's also modules to add on to it, which are basically in-game bonuses, and they're on the score sheet, but they're not represented on the card. So there's a lot of little gaps in the rules, and one of the biggest ones is there's not examples of these things. I mean, there's no scoring example. There's very few examples in the book. That there are some examples, but there's a lot of gaps. Like settling was one. We were settling, and it doesn't have an example of settling. So there was some confusion the first times we played, where we thought you could settle as many places as you wanted.
Yeah, well, I didn't. Yeah, but then when I read some of the cards when we played the more advanced version, I was like, Randy, I'm pretty sure that's one. Why don't you read?
Yeah.
Because you're placing multiple resources on a single location, and so there may have been some confusion of, well, I get to place all the resources down. And it's like, no, you're picking one. So that changed up the game a little bit.
Oh, yeah, it dramatically.
Because originally I was just like saving all my resources until the end of the round and then throwing them down, right?
Yeah.
And no, not the case. Now,
so I'm going to probably give the rule book, I'll give it a 6. It's not horrible. It's just there are a lot of holes in it as you go through, and you're going.
Well, there was a typo. We found one typo.
Yeah, there was a typo. There's some clarification. It needs clarifications. You have to go. We had to go on Board Game Geek several times to look up things, some of which there weren't answers for. Some there were. So yeah, I think I think it needs an addendum, an FAQ to be improved. Now it does have the rule reminder, which probably was a lot of the original FAQ, but I think it's still got some gaps in it. But 6, I think, is a fair score for it.
Okay. All right. So moving on to the actual gameplay. So you end up, we're just kind of go over the basic version here.
Well, I think we should explain what the differences are.
We maybe towards the end, because there's really only one major difference. Well, maybe a couple. All right. So basically, you have 4 different abilities on your board that you'll be playing in the standard version. So when it is your turn, you're going to take a card and place it at the location that you choose. Now, when you do that, you're going to increase your action marker up by 1, and eventually, as you do different actions throughout the round, it will end up costing you energy. Now, once I play the card on there, I'm going to take the actions that are on my player board. Now, some of these actions will include prefabbing a factory, so basically taking your resources and making a factory that you will later place onto the actual board. Another one is cloning, so we're going to clone humans or clone people, population, to be able to go on the board. You also maybe end up building a city or planning a city. And then you could be building a ship. You could be building a stadium, which gives happiness, which is a requirement in the game. You need at least 3 stadiums at the end of the game, basically to entertain your people. You can also do the settlement action, or you can build up your technology track or gain resources. So those are kind of different actions that you can end up taking. So I'm going to take an action, then Randy's going to take an action. And that keeps going until eventually you're going to end up passing because you're going to run out of energy.
Because it increments up. It starts out that they're free actions for your first 2, but then after that you start spending energy, and you only get as much as you produce. So you'll run out of energy at various paces depending on the order you built things in.
Now, something to note that and then the ships at the end of the round, your ships that are ready to go, you can load up and take to the next planet if you have the energy to do so. Now, the thing I would like to point out that as you take stuff away, you end up with less production.
Yeah.
So there's a management piece in that there's going to be a time where you may not have much production at all if you don't plan accordingly because you've taken everything off and you're moving it over. So there's kind of this nuance that you've got to figure out.
And you got to be careful because if you take resources, you got to make sure you're taking them from the right side, the old planet or the new planet, because you've got to produce it on the new planet before you can use it on the new planet. And there's a track along the middle of the board that's going to determine where you get to use resources from as far as energy goes. So you got to make sure that you're pulling from the right location, which is easy to mix up.
Yeah. So that all takes kind of this maneuvering around. Building a city, planning a city. That's cards. You'll get income for that as well. So the difference between this mode and the more advanced mode is that in the normal mode, you have to meet certain winning conditions for you to win, and that's basically it. Basically you have to have the racing mode. You have to have 3 stadiums, and you have to have production at least 8 above, and all your things. If you do so, you win.
Well, not necessarily. You trigger the end of the game.
Well, you trigger the end of the game, then you take off penalties, and if you still have everything, you win unless there's a tie. But there's a bunch of tiebreakers, even if no one has it. Like when we played, no one had all the things. So kind of keep that in mind. Now, this is a little bit different, and the other version is basically you're getting victory points for things, so it's about who gets the most victory points. So it's a little bit different in that aspect. And then instead of just having blank cards that you place at the different locations, you have actual cards that do different things. You can either choose to play it face down at a location to get your board actions, or you can play them face up and actually get the different things, which I liked quite a bit, actually. Yeah. I thought that was a lot more fun. But I did like having the board actions because especially towards the end of the round, I was running out of, I didn't need ships, and I didn't need this, and I didn't need that. So it was necessary to have both.
What's interesting is that if you're playing the race mode, you'll find that you move up the track really fast because you're playing actions. You're going to, the actual board has how much movement you'll get at the end on it, and there's a bonus that you get for trying to hit certain target scores on it, on the movements. But when you're playing on the other mode, the more powerful cards have 0 movement on them. And I found myself not really paying attention to that at first, and I ended up finding out, I'm only moving 4 spaces this turn.
I know, it was
I'm used
so
to moving
funny.
11 spaces.
I was like, because I was paying attention to that from the very beginning, and I moved a lot farther than you did.
Still won.
You know what, Randy?
So yeah, I think there's strategy to both ways. I mean, you're getting better ability as you move up because you have more regions on the board you can explore. And if we had played like multiple players, I think that would have been a bigger factor because you don't limit the board based on player count. More players you have, the more competition you're gonna have for space, which is going to drive you to have to go to new
right.
areas.
When we played 4-4, the gray filled up super quick. So that mattered quite a bit.
Because you start the game when you're moving over, you can only apply to the kind of the tundra area, the white area on the board. And then you have to level up moving down the track to get to the desert and the forest ultimately, and then the water area. But until you get further down the track, you're locked. You're restricted to areas, and if that fills up, you can't build anymore.
Yeah. So I will say, given my hithers, I would rather play the non-race mode.
Yeah.
But if I'm teaching somebody, I would totally play the other mode just because there is a lot going on.
I teach it once and then get back to playing this mode because there's not that. I mean, once you play the standard race mode, it's not a big jump to go to the other mode.
Right, but I think you kind of need it though because there is a lot going on. Overall, I really enjoyed this game. I actually liked it. There's this resource management on two things. There's also kind of a timing mechanism on it. So there's a lot going on that I appreciated. With that, I'm probably going to give this an 8.5. I really enjoyed it.
At this point, I've played it more times, I think, than anyone in the household or in our friends group. I like it. I think I'm going to give it a 9. I think this is my first 9 of the year because I think there's enough variance in the ways. Yeah. I think there's enough variability in how you can play this game, and I would like to see more cards. I think that's my only grievance because the bonus cards, there's only enough for everybody to get 3, or ultimately you're gonna get 4, but there's not a lot of variance as far as that goes because you throw out 1 at the end, and then the bonuses at the end. There's only 4 cards total. Now they are 2-sided, but there's not a lot of variety as far as the bonuses go. I would have liked to see more cards.
Well, I think this is right for expansion availability.
Yes.
So that's fine. That's great. That works out. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We had an absolute blast, and hopefully you can hang out with us again. We'll catch you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.